What's up, everybody? My name is Jason Lengstorf. I'm the VP of Developer Experience at Netlify and the host of Learn with Jason. I'm really excited to talk to you about what's possible with web applications today and without needing to become a truly full stack developer. But I thought it would be more fun, instead of me just telling you, I'd love to show you. So what I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to build a Vite app using Vite.js. We're going to build it with React and TypeScript. I'm going to use PlanetScale as a database, and I'm going to connect that database to my TypeScript app using Prisma. And then we're going to deploy the whole thing to Netlify. So we're going to do that all in the span of about 20 minutes. So, buckle in. This is going to be a bit of a speed run, but I just want to show you how much power we have as developers today to build a whole lot without a whole lot of time. We're going to start out in the terminal. I'm going to make a new directory. We'll call it Prisma Serverless PlanetScale Netlify. And then I'm going to move into that folder, and we're going to npm init vite at latest to make sure we get the latest version. And I'm going to make sure it shows up in this folder, so add a dot. So here we go. Then we need to give it a name, so we'll call it Prisma Serverless. We don't really need this. I'm going to go into Preact, and then I want to use Preact TS so that we get the TypeScript. So now that I'm in here, I can run Npm Install, and that will install all of our dependencies. So Preact, Vite, all the things that we need to actually build this thing. And then if I run Netlify dev, it will auto detect that we're using Vite and get my dev server up and running. So here we go, Netlify dev with Vite. It's got everything running, including a proxy that we'll use for serverless functions later on. And here's our site. Okay, so that's all good. We want to do that. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to sign up for our PlanetScale account. So I'm going to hit get started. Now I already have an account, so I'm going to hit sign in instead, and I'm going to use GitHub. Now, once we get in here, it is going to show you a screen like this. It shows you how PlanetScale works. Now, I'm going to skip this for time's sake, but I'm going to hit this no thanks, I've done this before down here. And I'm going to call this database Prisma Serverless. And I'm in Portland, Oregon, so I'm going to choose Oregon. And now we will create our database. So I've got a database here. Now the next thing that I want to do, because I've got this set up, is I need to install the PlanetScale CLI. Now I have the PlanetScale CLI already, which you can see here. If I didn't, I would follow the instructions for installing the PlanetScale CLI, which are in the docs. I will link to that in the show notes, so make sure that you check that out if you're trying to get started. So what I'm going to do is make sure that I'm logged in, so pscale auth login, and this will open up the PlanetScale site. It gives me a device confirmation code. If I look down here, I can see what this device confirmation code is. So there we are. We know that it's true, so I can confirm. And now I am logged in. There we go. All right, so the first thing that I want to do is, because we are going to be developing on this database, I want to create some branches. So the way that this works is PlanetScale's CLI is really powerful, so I can just run pscale branch and create. Then I want to create it on my Prisma Serverless database, and I'm going to create a branch called dev. So there we go. It's creating a branch. Done. Next, I want to create a shadow database. So this branch is going to be used by Prisma for migrations. I don't really know how it works, but the nice thing is I don't need to know how it works, because again, these services handle all this stuff for you. So pscale branch create Prisma Serverless shadow to create my shadow branch. And now what I want to do is I want to connect to both of these locally, because in order to do any of the setup stuff that I need to do, I need to have root access, and you can only do that, as far as I know, locally. So I'm going to go pscale connect, and then we'll go to Prisma Serverless, our database name, and then I choose my branch. So I'm going to say dev, and I want to make sure that I've got multiple connections open, so I'm going to choose ports. So 3309 is going to be my first port. All right. And now it is connected. You can see that we're at 127.0.0.1, port 3309. All right, let's do another one. So the next one is going to be pscale connect, and it's going to be Prisma Serverless shadow. And for this one, let's use a port of 3310. Here we go. All right, so now that's connected. Okay, so now that we've got those connected, I am going to head into my code here. So let's go back to this first one. I'm going to code this. We'll open it up. And this is my source code for my site that we just created using Vite. So inside here, I'm going to create a new file. We're going to call it .env. And inside of here, I need to create a database URL and a shadow database URL. And these are going to be used by Prisma. Now, the format for these is we're going to quote it because there's some special characters here. MySQL root at 127.0.0.1, then the name of our database, so Prisma Serverless, and that is it, actually. So, oh wait, I forgot the port. We need to include the port. That's very important. So now that I've got this, there is my root at our local server at the port that we specified. And then for the shadow database, it's the exact same thing, except we're using a different port. So this gets us to the two different branches, right? Now that, once we've saved it, will allow us to actually connect to Prisma. So the next thing that we want to do here is initialize Prisma in our app. So I'm going to go back out here and I'm going to install it. So the first thing I want is the Prisma tools. This is going to give us access to the Prisma CLI. I'm going to install that as a development dependency because we don't need it in production. And then I also need Prisma client. And that's going to be what we use in our serverless functions to actually read and write to the database. Once these are both installed, I can run a command using the Prisma CLI. I'm using npx, so I don't have to install it globally, or npx prisma init. And this will build a couple things that we need. So first and foremost, we get Prisma. Here it is, all right? And that gives us a schema.prisma. We're going to need that. And then if we didn't have it, it would show us that we need a database URL, right? So because we've got this already set up, it didn't do anything. That's a nice little feature of Prisma to not break our stuff. And then in here, we need to make a couple adjustments. So the first thing is it tells us who made the setup, the generators, Prisma client.js, and then the data source for our database, where things come from. And the first thing that we want to do is we're going to add some features. So in order to work with PlanetScale, we are going to use something called referential integrity. I'm going to be completely honest, I don't know what this is. I just know that we need it. So I am following instructions here. Next, we're going to switch from Postgres to MySQL because that is the PlanetScale way. Then we're going to switch out to include the shadow database URL, and we'll use that environment variable there. This is a little helper from Prisma to pick up your environment variable, so we can set that. And then the last thing is now that we have referential integrity, we're going to set it to Prisma. And again, not 100% sure what that is, but I do know that it's important. So now that we've got the connection set up, we need to tell our database what it needs to actually be. So we're going to set up a model. Now I'm using a post model. This is, if you've read some tutorials about PlanetScale, you might recognize this model because it's one that I borrowed from David Park. So what we're going to do is we're going to have an ID that is going to be a number that auto increments. We're going to have a created at, and that is going to give us date time, and it will default to right now, which is really nice. Here is an updated at, and that is also a date time. And this one, we have a shortcut to just say, hey, when was this updated? Put that in there. We can set our title to be a string, and this is going to be a varchar of a maximum 255 characters. And finally, content can be a string. Okay, so that's our whole database model. We're only going to allow for posts. This is not going to be the most complete example, but we will be able to read and write from the database, and we're going to be able to do it in 20 minutes, which is pretty dang exciting. Okay, so now that we've got this set up, we can actually configure Prisma using this, and that'll update our PlanetScale database as well. So I'm going to run npm or npx Prisma migrate, and then I'm going to use the dev command, and that will pick up this schema and modify the table structure in PlanetScale so that we can actually use it. So this is my name for it. I'm going to call it init, and that gets us set up. And you can see here now we've got a migrations folder, and it'll show us kind of what happened here. This is the SQL that runs under the hood. Again, we don't have to care about this at all. What I am going to do though is I'm going to go into my database here, and I'm going to check this box to automatically copy migration data. Now, as far as I know, this is kind of optional. Like, I don't know that you need it, but what it's going to give us the ability to do is track this migration data as it happens, so that if you need to go back, you can find all the metadata that was used. I'm not a database administrator. I'm just kind of following instructions here, and so far it all seems to work the way that I want it to. So now that we're out here, we've got our database, everything is working. And here's the really exciting part. Now we can actually start writing data, and we can do that using this built-in npx Prisma Studio. Now what the Prisma Studio does is it builds a little UI that runs localhost, and inside of it, you can just edit your stuff. So here's our post model that we created. If I click into here, I can add a record, and it'll say, look, it's gonna auto increment this ID. It's gonna show up when it was updated. Here's our updated @ So I can click in here and say, hey, a post. And then let's add some content. And my content is going to be, this is very informative. All right, and I click out of here, and then we can see here that we can save changes. I'm going to save. All right, so now we have a post. This post is now usable in our stuff, so we can connect and actually read it out. So why don't we do that? So to do that, I'm going to stop the studio because I don't need it right now. And I'm going to run npx Prisma generate. What generate does is it takes the schema and it creates a Prisma client that will have TypeScript definition so that we can autocomplete all the things we need to interact with our database. This is super, super, super handy. And you can see here that it's given us something to copy paste. I'm going to copy paste that. And then I'm going to come over here and create our first serverless function. The reason I'm using a serverless function is I want to very strictly control the way that anybody can touch this. So I'm going to use Netlify's auto detection here, Netlify Functions, and we're going to call this one posts.ts because I want to use TypeScript. And I'm going to import this Prisma client. And then down here, I'm going to export async function handler, because that's what a serverless function needs to export, is a handler. And inside of it, I'm going to do a try catch block. And in my try catch block, we are going to, if anything goes wrong, just return that error. So we'll catch an error and we'll say return status code of 500. This is an HTTP status code. So it'll just say, hey, our server failed, something went wrong. And we'll just stringify the error because we don't know what it is, but this should give us at least enough of a clue to go kind of hunt it and figure out what happened. Now in here, what we want to do is we want to try to get all of our posts, and Prisma makes this really easy. So when I go here, I can go to post, look at that, it found our post type, and then I can just go find many. All right, and if I hover over this, it's got all this information, including a sample of get all posts. Okay, so that's just a function. I'm just going to call that, right? All right, there we go. Good. Done, done, done. We are very happy. So then I'm going to return a status code of 200, and I'm going to send a header. We'll say that it is a content type of application JSON, and then that's all we're going to need there. So then down here as a body, I'm going to JSON stringify the posts. All right, so that's going to be our serverless function that actually lets this thing run. So let's just give it a shot. Let's try it. So I'm going to run in Netlify dev. And this is going to start the server. It includes a proxy. You can see here that it loaded our environment variables from the .env file. And then if I come out here and I run .netlify functions posts, it gives me my post. Okay, so we're now reading from the database. This is great. This is exactly what we wanted. Okay, so step one done. The next thing that we want to do is we want to be able to actually write new posts. So let's create another one. I'm going to create a new file. We're going to call it post.ts. Inside of this, we're going to use that same Prisma setup here, and we could probably make this more efficient. I am building a demo, so I'm going to let the Prisma team tell me what we should be doing here to make sure that we're pooling connections and all the things that need to be done. And this one is going to take an event. We want to actually pull the title and content out of the body. So I'm going to get title and content, and we're going to get those from JSON parsing the event.body. All right, so this gives us the event.body, which is whatever we post to this function. So then again, we're going to try catch, And if it fails, I'm just going to use this same catch block. So let me copy paste that. And we're going to drop that in right here. So what we want to do is first, we're just going to await prisma.post.create, autocomplete that. And then here's my data. And so the data that I want to send in is going to be my title and content. Everything else gets auto-generated, so I don't have to create any of those. And then assuming this works, we're going to send back a status code of 200, and we will send back a body of post created. We don't actually need this. We just need to send back something so that we can verify that the thing worked. And now that we've got this, we'll see that Netlify dev has picked up that new function. And so I'm going to test it by going into Postman. So here I've got localhost 8888 set up. So let's go to Netlify Functions and Post, and I've got it set to use post. So then I'm going to go into my body, and I've already got a title and some content set. So if I run this, we'll see, here we go, we got a post created. And when I come back out and run this again, now we've got 2 posts. So this is pretty exciting, right? We've already got read write going. So let's see if we can, in just a couple of minutes, build out a front end for this. So I'm going to go into my app.tsx here. And inside app.tsx, I'm going to clean house. Let's get all this stuff out of here. Gone. And then inside, I'm going to first set up some of the bits that we need just for markup, right? So let's start here. We'll say first we're going to have an h1, and this is going to say my posts. All right. Then underneath this, we're going to set up an unordered list, and we'll do something in here once we have the posts. Then down here, we're going to set up a form, and it's going to say create a post, and underneath it, we will set up a form. This form is going to need to handle submissions, but we're not going to do that just yet. We'll do that in a second. So let's set up an HTML4, and that is going to be for the title, and we're going to give it a title. And then down here, it's going to be a type of text. It's going to be an ID of title that needs to line up with the HTML4. It needs a name of title. That's what we're going to use in the serverless function. It's going to need a value. We haven't created this yet, but we're going to give it a value, a title. And then on change, we are going to feed it a function. And this function is an event. That event is going to be set as the title. We're going to use state here. So this is going to fight us because we haven't imported it yet. But what I'm going to do is do some casting of this as an HTML input element. Let's go input. There it is. Because otherwise Preact will yell at me. And then we get the value of our target, right? So that just means anytime somebody changes this function or changes this input form, use it as the value. So then we're going to duplicate this whole set. I'm going to change these all to say content. Oops. Content. This one needs to be capitalized. Okay, all good. This one also needs to be capitalized. All right. And then we need to go up here and actually use this stuff. So let's import use state from, and we're using Preact here. So we're going to go Preact hooks. All right. So then I can const title set title, and that's going to be use state and an empty string. I'm going to duplicate that, and we will make it content, capitalize it. It's going to be content. All right, we're happy. So now if I go to save this, let's give it a button first. Then this button is going to be button type submit, and we'll say save. All right, now I'm going to make a couple quick changes to the CSS as well so that it looks less terrible. So let's go with HTML and body. I'm going to use the sys font here. I've got a shortcut to make that happen. And then I also need to just make our labels and buttons just a little bit less junky in their sign up. So I'm going to go display block and a margin top of 1 rem. Okay, that should be good. All right, so let's go look at our app. So I'm coming back out here, And now what we'll get is we can see we've got our post, we've got the ability to create a post, and when I type, our post updates. Okay, so that should be good for us to actually build things. So going into app.tsx here, then I can come up and we're gonna add a couple more things. What I need first is I need the ability to load our posts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a use effect. So we're gonna import use effect as well. And once this page loads, I'm gonna run a use effect. And that, for now, can run right when the page loads. Okay, so then when the page loads, we're gonna have an async function, we'll call it load. That is going to get all of our posts, and it will be an await of a fetch call, which will go to our Netlify Functions posts, and when it comes back, that's going to give us a response, and we need to turn that response into JSON. All these little helpful overlays here killing me. So now that we've got this res.json, that should give us all of our posts, and then we need to set those to something. So let's set posts. We'll have to create that, and we'll set it to all posts. All right, so now that we've got that, let's get our post set up here. And I'm just gonna duplicate this, and we'll say posts. And instead of an empty string, we're gonna send in an empty array now. All right, so once we've got our empty array, we're gonna actually call this thing at the bottom of our use effect. So when the component first loads, it's gonna fire off this function to load posts, and then set those as a posts area variable in state. So then down here, I can actually use these, but in order to do it, I need a type for my post. So let's write a type real quick. And this type is gonna be a post, and it's going to equal an ID, which is a number. It's gonna have a title, which is a string. It's gonna have content, which is also a string. It's got created at, which is date, and updated at, which will be also a date. So once I save this, then I can come down here and we'll say post.map. And for each of these, we're gonna get a post, which is a post. And then inside, we can do fun stuff. So we'll set up a key. That key is gonna be post.id. Good. All right, so now that we've got that, inside of it, I can set up, we'll call it an H3, which has got the post title. And this is all auto-completing because of TypeScript. I'm gonna set up a paragraph, which will be created, and we'll just do like a new date of post created at, and then we'll go to locale string, and that'll be good enough for now. And then finally, we're gonna set the post content, post content. All right, and if I come out here now and I look, here are our posts. Okay, so we've got posts. So then the last thing that I wanna do is I wanna be able to create new ones, and I'm going to do that by creating a function called async function handle submit. This is gonna be a standard handle submit. I am hacking the heck out of this because there's some stuff that I didn't have time to look up on how to type these properly. So we're gonna just do an any hack. Sorry, TypeScript fans. We're gonna prevent default. All right, and then finally what we're gonna do is await fetch, and we're gonna send this to our Netlify Functions post, and this is going to be sent as a post. It's gonna get a body of JSON stringify our title and content. That's what we needed there. All right, so then once we get down here, we're gonna clear the title, we're gonna clear the content, and then the other thing that I wanna do is I wanna cause our posts to reload so that they show up. So I'm gonna make a little flag for this. I'm sure that like David Khorshid would be very upset with me for what I'm about to do, but you know, he's not here to show me a better way, so we're just gonna do it this way. So I'm gonna do load posts and set load posts, and we're gonna start it out as a use state of true. Okay, so we'll go down into load here, and what we're gonna do is make sure that if load post is false, we only wanna load if load post is true, right? So if it's false, we're gonna return and do nothing. And then we want to, down here, after we've done the load, so on the initial load, it's going to be true, which means we'll get past this, we'll run the post. But then that means that we need to set this to false so that it doesn't run again. And then we want to have the use effect check every time that load post changes. So this should run every time that load post changes. Now, the reason for that is that down here in handle submit, we're going to set load post to true. And that is how we're going to get every time we submit, it will update that handle load post. So now you can see this handle submit's not being used yet. So we just got to put this in place. What we are going to do here is we're going to say on submit, and we're going to pass in handle submit. Okay, so let's give this a shot. We're going to head over to our app. If I reload the page, we can see we're still pulling from the database. And now I should be able to add a new one. So we'll say another one and created from the UI. Let's save it. And there it goes. It clears, it adds, and if I refresh the page, it's there. So now we've got a fully functional app. It allows us to load posts from the database. It allows us to create new posts. And I want to get this thing live. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go out. And remember, we've been running this on our dev branch and on our shadow branch. So to go live, what we need to do is we're going to take our serverless database, and we're on the main branch here. So what I want to do is I want to get into this main branch. I want to promote it to production. So I'm going to go into my branches here, and I'm going to click on main. I'm going to promote a branch to production. We're choosing main, and I'm promoting. So now that this dev branch is configured the way that we want it to be, I want to promote it to our main branch. And so this works really similarly to a pull request in GitHub. So we're going to do what's called a deploy request, and I'm going to create it, and I want it to go to Prisma Serverless, and we're going to set it for dev. So this will go to our production branch and create a deploy request number one. And then if I go out here, I can click here and we'll see here's a deploy request. So we can, and this is really powerful. So let's check this out really quickly. You can see the schema changes. So we can see the diff here. And then if I go back to this summary, I have an option to actually add to the deploy queue. So I can click this button and this will start taking this live. So it's gonna, here it is deployable. They're being deployed. This takes a little bit of time. And once that's done, our site will be live. So while that's happening, there it goes, it's done. What I'm gonna do is I need to get my, my connection string. So I go up to this connect tab. Now keep in mind, I'm on the main branch here. So I'm in the connect tab. I could run this through here, but I'm gonna do it through generate new password. And then I can choose Prisma right from the bottom here. And this gives me a password. So I'm gonna copy this. And then what I actually need to do is put this into my deployed app. So I'm gonna create a place to keep this. And we can see here that it's got, it's got the username, it's got a long generated password, and then it goes to the name of the app and which region it's in and all that good stuff. And then at the end, we see this SSL accept strict, which means that it's gonna make sure that all of the connections are secured. I only need this MySQL part here. So I'm gonna grab this and I'm gonna hold on to it. And now we're gonna deploy this app. So I'm coming over here, I'm stopping my server, and let's do the git status here. So I'm gonna get init. All right, so here's my app. This is everything that I need. So I'm going to just add a few things. So like we don't wanna track the .m. So I'm gonna add that to the git ignore. All right, what else do we got in here? Let's go .netlify to .git ignore. And then I can git add again. Let's do that check one more time. Okay, the .netlify stuff is gone. Great, I'm happy. So let's git commit, and we will say ready to deploy. Okay, so now we're gonna GitHub repo create. I'm using the GitHub CLI here, and it's gonna create a repository for us. It's gonna be public. I want it to have the same name as my folder here. So there goes that repository. Then I'm gonna netlify init so that we can create a new site from this repo. And this is gonna let me create and configure a new site. I'm using the Netlify CLI here. I'm gonna put it on my own team, and we will call this Prisma Serverless. We'll just leave it at that. Then I'm going to keep the default. So it is a Vite site, so we'll Vite build. It's gonna use the dist dir, which is the default. Netlify Functions is where we put our functions. So off it goes. Now the next thing that I want to do is I want to add this database URL. So I'm going to use the Netlify env set command, set database URL, and paste in this MySQL string. And that is now going off. There it goes. That is set. So we've got all this code. So I'm going to git push upstream origin main. And that is going to actually deploy the site. So then if I go out to my site and I can Netlify open here, and then that's going to open it up in this browser. There it is. And we can see our site actually building here. That first one was an empty repo is why that failed. We hadn't pushed anything yet. So now that we've actually pushed up our code, it's going to go. It's got that database URL, and everything should, fingers crossed, do what we expect it to do. So off it goes. You can see here the site builds. Like Vite is just ridiculously fast. Took about 1 second to build the site, 2 seconds to package up the functions. So the whole site is done in about 30 seconds. That is just wild. And then if we come out here, here's our app, Prisma Serverless. Okay, but note this: there's no posts here, and this is actually intentional. Our production database does not have the same data as our dev database. So if I now want to create a new one, production post, this is in production, and I save it. Here's our post, right? And this is really powerful because it means each branch can have different content in it. That is really, really, really powerful for us. There are ways that we can merge the content in if we need to. It's just not something we're going to cover today. And with that, that is a full production app build deployed to the internet, actually functional, using serverless functions so that we can power a full site with a custom database. I hope you're walking away from this inspired. I hope you're walking away from this jazzed up to go and build something. I can't wait to see what you build. Quick shout out to Prisma Serverless. Thank you so much for having me. I will see you all around the internet. Thanks so much.